Zion National Park has some epic trails, but they aren't meant for everyone, particularly kids. It's tough to know which trails in Zion are good for children. Some trails are long, some have too much climbing, and others can be boring. In this episode, I'll show you the best kid-friendly trails in Zion National Park, including trails with waterfalls, petroglyphs, and all-around gorgeous views. Before you hit the trail with your kids, you'll want to make sure you're prepared. So here are a few things to keep in mind. First, make sure to pack plenty of water and snacks. The visitor center and lodge have water refill stations, so make sure to fill up before you start adventuring. In most cases, kids can get by with tennis shoes, but try not to let them hike in flip-flops, sandals, and Crocs. This is for their own comfort and safety. Next, always check the weather. Check the temperature and conditions. Zion can get very hot, and if there's rain in the forecast, you'll want to stay away from slot canyons and river trails. Finally, remember that you know your child better than anyone, and you know their capabilities. I can give you details about the trails, but you'll have to decide if your child is capable. One other way to prepare for your trip is with our Zion National Park Travel Guide. This is a 100-page guide that provides details about every district in Zion, with walkthroughs and itineraries to help you plan an epic trip. Our Zion Travel Guide is available at the link in the description. Surprisingly, when it comes to hiking with your kids, there are two trails that a lot of people ask about: Angel's Landing and the Narrows. These are the two most popular trails in Zion, so naturally people want to experience them with their children. Personally, I think there are better trails to enjoy with your kids, but we'll get to those in a minute. On the topic of Angel's Landing and the Narrows, I'll be brief. When it comes to the Angel's Landing trail, it's actually a great trail for kids, until you get to the chain section. The chain section is the final 0.4 miles of the trail. This section has a narrow path and steep cliffs, and children shouldn't be anywhere near it, but everything leading up to the chain section is relatively kid-friendly. Just keep in mind that the hike is almost entirely uphill, and there are a few cliffs along the way, so you'll have to keep an eye on your kids. The trail is a little more than 4 miles long, which can be a lot for some kids, but overall the path is paved and easy to follow. Scout Lookout is the final stop before the chain section. It has restrooms and great views, and it's a great stopping point for families. The Narrows is an iconic trail, and it's also great for kids. Plus, the great thing about the Narrows is that you can just hike until you've had enough. The trail is beautiful, even if you just do a small section, but there are a few things you'll want to watch for if you have kids. When you're hiking the Narrows, you will always be fighting the current, and it has a tendency to wear kids out quickly. Also, it gets deep in a few spots, so depending on the child, you might have to carry them through certain areas. If you're hiking in spring and fall, you'll want to watch the water temperatures, because it can get cold, which makes for a rough day. Finally, you'll want to watch the speed of the current. The Narrows can be difficult for children on a normal day, so if the Virgin River is moving faster than normal, you'll want to find another trail. Luckily, Zion has a ton of great kid-friendly trails. Most of the trails on this list are relatively short, plus several of these are located outside the main canyon, which means parking is easier and crowds are smaller in most cases. The first trail is an easy one. The Paris Trail starts at the Zion Canyon Visitor Center, and it stretches all the way to Canyon Junction. It's a 3-mile round trip and the entire path is paved. The trail follows the Virgin River through lower Zion Canyon, with views of the Watchman in the distance. The Paris Trail is easy and basic, but it's a great starting point if you aren't sure about your child's capabilities. The next kid-friendly trail is also in Zion Canyon, and it's the Riverside Walk. This one starts at the Temple of Sinawava, and you'll have to take the shuttle to get there. This is a mostly paved path, and it's easy to follow. The trail branches off in several areas, and it leads down to the shore of the Virgin River. Families can have a picnic on the beach, and kids can play in the river, so it's a great option to keep the family busy on a warm summer day. Moving outside the main canyon, the next stop is in East Zion. Petroglyph Pools uses a small pullout as its trailhead. The path drops into a creek bed, then passes through a tunnel. On the other side of the tunnel, you'll find several petroglyphs. The trail is pretty easy to follow, but walking through the sand can get a little old. This is a short trail, and the only real elevation gain is on the way back to the car. The next trail is on the west side of Zion Canyon. The Northgate Peaks Trail is another great kid-friendly trail, and most people have never heard of it. but it's a great little gem that's tucked away in Kolob Terrace. This trail starts at the Wildcat Canyon trailhead, and it's about 45 minutes from Springdale. The trail is relatively flat, and the crowds are normally very small. A half mile into the trail, you'll hit a junction and take a right. After another half mile, you'll reach an overlook for Guardian Angel and the Northgate Peaks. The trail technically continues past the overlook to a rough path that leads up and down the peaks. If you're hiking with children, you should use the overlook as your stopping point. The next kid-friendly trail is the Taylor Creek Trail. Taylor Creek is one of the most underrated trails in all of Zion, and it's definitely kid-friendly. Taylor Creek is in Kolob Canyons, which is Zion's northernmost district. The trail passes through the creek several times with small cascades along the trail. There are 2 historic cabins, and the trail ends at the Double Arch Alcove. The trail is 5 miles long, which can be long for some kids, but it's an easy 5 miles, with a small amount of elevation gain. Back in East Zion, the Canyon Overlook Trail is one of the most popular trails in the park. It's a short trail with a small amount of elevation gain. The path passes through a small alcove, and you'll have a decent chance of spotting bighorn sheep on this trail. Although there are several ledges along the way, so you'll want to keep your kids close by. The trail hugs cliffs while it works its way to the Canyon Overlook. This viewpoint provides a great view of Lower Zion Canyon. Parking at the Canyon Overlook Trail can be rough to say the least, so try to do this one outside of peak hours to avoid a headache. Heading back into the main canyon, the Emerald Pools Trail is another great kid-friendly hiking option. It can be accessed from the Zion Lodge or the Grotto. Emerald Pools has 3 separate pools, a lower, middle, and an upper pool. The Emerald Pools Trail can be hit and miss, so you have to time it right. In the spring, during the snowmelt, this trail has great scenery. Small waterfalls tumble off the cliffs filling each pool. There's even a massive waterfall at the upper pool. Of course, the flow of the water will change depending on the season. Back in East Zion, Lower Clear Creek, also known as the Hobbit Hole, is one of East Zion's best hidden gems. The only tough part is the parking. You'll have to get a spot in a tiny pullout on the side of the road. The trail begins with a quick downhill section. This part can be tough for kids, so take your time. Once you get to the bottom, you'll follow a creek bed through a tunnel, and after a few hundred feet, you'll see an entrance to a small slot canyon. The slot canyon goes on for a few hundred feet, and there's a small arch at the end of it. From there, the trail keeps following the river, but the slot canyon and arch are the main attractions on this trail. Another great kid-friendly hike that most people have never heard of is Lower Pine Creek Falls. This trail hides in plain sight. If you're coming from the south entrance, and you pass Canyon Junction, the Zion Mount Carmel Scenic Highway has several switchbacks that lead to East Zion. The trailhead for Lower Pine Creek Falls is located at the first switchback, just past Canyon Junction. This is a relatively short trail. You'll have to rock hop and walk through the creek. If you follow the creek far enough, you'll find Lower Pine Creek Falls. This is a thin, multi-leveled waterfall with a nice pool at the bottom. Some families even like to use this as a swimming hole, but it can get busy during peak season. Still, it's a great way to spend an afternoon with your kids.